Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Mike Bomersky. I'm the Assistant Superintendent here at Hempfield, and it is just an honor to have this number of parents in attendance for a session that's very important, especially from a district where we're looking over the next couple of years where all students will have an iPad and that one-to-one device at home and at school. So this evening, we are honored to have Lisa Murray with us. Lisa does seminars in all different areas, areas focusing on parenting skills and bullying. So this one was a combined piece for her in terms of parenting and electronic devices. She also works with businesses and more leadership type opportunities. And having been part of Lisa's seminars in the past, she's a great presenter, as well as will keep you engaged. And at any point, should you have questions, during, at least we'll address that. But we'll be here afterwards to answer any questions, not only about this topic, but if there's any district questions that you have, we're happy to answer those questions as well. So again, thank you for coming out tonight, and enjoy the presentation by Lisa Murray.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So everyone needs to have a packet. So if you don't have a packet, there's some on some of the chairs up here. So we just want to make sure you get one, or if you're sharing one with a spouse, that's fine. Does anybody need one? Okay, and we may make a couple extras just in case. This is a great, great crowd. So let me just tell you a little bit about who I am and where I'm coming from with this whole topic. By day, I'm the practice administrator at an ophthalmology office in Carlisle. I live in Lancaster, and I drive to Carlisle every day. And technology has been an issue for me managing 14 employees, because this problem doesn't go away in childhood. So one of the things I want you to know is, if you don't get some boundaries and structure and consistency in place while your children are young, the problems they're experiencing now with getting addicted to some of these devices just gets worse and worse. And I'll tell you a quick sad story. I'm managing this doctor's office. I have one of the employees come in and say, Lisa, we've got a problem on one of the computers. You can imagine. It's an adult problem. And so I had to address this very adult problem with someone who was working for me. And it was a very delicate matter to address. And I was 3 weeks on the job. And the doctor says to me, I need you to take care of it. I need you to handle it. I don't want you to fire this individual. I want you to give him another chance. And I said, okay. I said, well, where's our technology policy? Where's our computer policy? And he said, we don't have one. I need you to create one. So this person who was working for the doctor was looking at things during the day that we were paying him salary, and he was looking at things that were 100% not acceptable and inappropriate for his job. And so I had to address this very delicate thing with this person who's been employed there for about 20 years. And so this was a problem, he told me, that dated way back, that it grew and grew and grew, and that there were no limits or boundaries for him. And I'm telling you, coming from someone who's now managing 14 employees, we want to get control of this now with our children. And we want to give them a really good sense of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Make sure there's balance in their lives. And you're the first model for that. Mr. Bomersky mentioned that I do a lot of seminars on different topics, and I do. And one of my most important topics is when I talk to you about your parenting style and the 3 most important components to your style of parenting, which are structure, boundaries, and consistency, which will make you an authoritative parent. And that's the study that shows makes the healthiest kids. And so when we talk about technology, if you do not have structure, boundaries, and consistency in what you're saying to the children about technology, the child is going to get inconsistent messages about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So we really need to look at several things tonight. And I want to tell you some of the things we're going to address. This is a short period of time to address them. So I am going to give you time to talk to each other a few minutes and brainstorm and talk about issues you're having. But certainly after this is over, if you have any questions or comments or things you want to talk to me about privately, please email me. I have my email on the front of your packet. some of the things we're going to talk about. What are the consequences of not having those boundaries in place? Well, there's several consequences, and we'll discuss those. What are some of the studies showing? I'm not going to get into a lot of it, but things can get very challenging and difficult for kids who get immersed into technology and don't have a healthy balance. We're going to look at what are boundaries. What are those tips and things that you probably have already heard or know, but you have not implemented. So I'm going to actually show you what the Murray household looks like, what it looked like when my son was younger. My son's an 18-year-old senior at Manheim Township, graduating, going to college this summer. And there were boundaries in place for him all through the year. So I'm just going to show you what we did in our house. I'm just kind of putting myself out there. A lot of it we got right, some of it we got wrong. We tweaked it, and we kept trying to be as consistent as we could with our approach. I asked my son last night, his name is Grant, I said, Grant, I'm doing this technology seminar and boundaries for parents, and I asked him certain questions, and I'm going to tell you what his answer as an 18-year-old young man said to you as parents that he think you should be doing. And I thought the answers were really interesting. I thought it was really interesting. What are the benefits to technology? Obviously, there's benefits. Some schools that I work with have a lot of technology, and some don't. And so there's certainly benefits to technology, and the world now is very technological. So your kids need to be able to use all the different types of technology, again, with some limits and structure in place. And then, do you need a technology contract? And I have those over there. I printed them out for you. You can tweak them and make them your own, but I just gave you kind of a generic form. You can add to it, take things away. But we're going to look at, are you in a position where you think you really need a contract? I didn't have a contract for my son, but I have friends who did have technology contracts. Just like I had a driver's contract. You can come up with different types of contracts for kids. And it just puts it in paper, it puts it in writing. It gives you that structure that maybe you need to help explain these things to kids. So if you could describe, just in a sentence, without getting into too much detail, why this topic was really important to you and why you ended up coming tonight. Who could just tell me kind of in a few words, why are you here? Yes?
We have a 9-year-old who lives in 2 households, and so we have, by nature, we're different. So we're hoping to get guidelines to how to make it work for him consistently. Consistency is what we think.
Yes, that's fantastic. So a child who goes from household to household, having that consistent plan in place and people saying the same thing to the child about the use of technology is going to be extremely beneficial to the child. Why else are you here?
It just seems like children are just drawn to the electronic devices, and if given freedom, they'll spend hours upon hours, and it's okay. Sometimes there's good learning, but there needs to be boundaries and limits.
Absolutely, okay? So looking at today's world and the society that the kids are growing up in, unless you give them balance and limits, they're not going to do it on their own. And so as a parent, it's your job to set the limits. It's your child's job to test the limits. And that's a really good quote by Ray Levy. He wrote the book Try and Make Me. And he says, it's a parent's job to set the limits. It's a child's job to push them and test them. And so be prepared when you go home and tell your child, oh, by the way, we're going to do things a little differently. They are going to push you and they are going to test you. It's your job as a parent to dig deep and stay true to what you know is probably right for them at the time. Any other reasons why you're here? Well, I have a few resource books up here, and I love these 2 books in particular. This book says, Give Me, Get Me, Buy Me. And it's by Donna Corwin. And I really like this chapter. It's called Media Messages. And it says, ding, 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 this is a wake-up call. Are you listening, parents? You may not like the message. The media, technology, it's not a new phenomenon. It's part of our culture. television, internet, texting, phones, video games, Skyping, magazines, books, MySpace, YouTube, on and on, are all methods of communication. There is minimal censorship on these information highways, and monitoring what your child sees and hears is not an easy task. So when you think about all of the things that your child gets bombarded with, information-wise, it can be a scary place for kids. And so this is why it's so important to look at what happens when we don't have boundaries in place. This video, there's a video, and I put it in the back of your packet as a resource, but it was from Nature Valley, and it's a really interesting video that I watched multiple times. This is a quote from a little boy. He says, "I forget I'm in a house, that I have parents, that I have a sister, that I have a dog. I just think I'm in the video game." And a little girl says, "I would die if I didn't have my tablet." How sad is that? That they become so involved that they lose sight of everything around them. And so I encourage you to go to that website and look at that video, and it shows children talking about their use of technology. Then it shows adults talking about what they did as a child to have fun. And boy, it might bring back some memories, depending on your age. It might bring back some memories for you. When we look at technology in kids, the American Academy of Pediatrics is really warning parents about screen time. I see super young children playing with their parents' phones, like little itty bitty, like 9 and 10-month-olds. And so they're basically saying 2 hours a day for children 3 to 18. Yikes! Think about that, okay?
And how would you, if you're going to implement that, it's kind of pointless then to use it in school.
Well, when we're talking about at home, obviously we're not talking about doing homeworks and using the iPads and all of that type of thing. We're talking about these video games and watching all the movies and just all of the screens that kids can see 2 hours a day. For 2-year-olds, they're saying 9. That's what their recommendations are. When we're looking at 6th graders who went 5 days, just 5 days, without being exposed to technology, they could actually read people better. Why? Because they're looking at people instead of a screen. And so that's one of my biggest observations of children today. I work with hundreds and hundreds of parents every year. So besides working at the practice, the full-time practice, I run this seminar business. And I work with hundreds of parents. And one of the things that parents are telling me is kids are losing their social skills. I was at Giant, it was about 2 years ago. I was walking into Giant, I pulled the cart out in Manhattan Township, and this woman came up to me from my church and she said, "Lisa, sorry to hear about your son," and I'll just call her Abby. And I said, "Oh, what about my son and Abby?" No idea. I knew Abby was my son's girlfriend. And she said, "Oh, well, he broke up with her through text message this weekend." And I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, he broke up with his girlfriend through text message." And I thought, we're losing our ability to communicate socially with people we're close to. Because what do when something gets hard? We just send a text message. I've had adults send me text messages of things that they would never have said to my face. Okay? We're losing our ability to connect with people. And kids are losing that ability to read human emotion. I mean, we're looking at the little smiley faces and all the things that they're sending each other instead of individual faces. Frustration, irritation, sorrow, heartbreak. They're losing that ability because they're no longer interacting as much with actual people. What do you think of that? Yeah.
I totally agree. And one thing that I find really odd as I watch my wife and my 9-year-old and how he interacts. When I was in elementary school, my dad and I would go to computers together. When I was getting my bachelor's degree from Millersville, a big part of my minor was geospatial information science and computer modeling. And I watch what he does, and it's almost all just consumption. It's just mindless consumption and very light communication. I just don't see them focusing on even like what makes an iPad, the leaps and bounds that technologies came, like what the different interfaces are. It's just looking at content, and consumers not creating anything. I find that very interesting.
Yeah. So when we look at this, I hope it makes you say to yourself, what am I doing to help my children learn how to read other people? This is a key emotional intelligence trait. It's one of the key areas that I've studied with children. And studies show children's social and emotional ability is much greater an indicator of their success overall in school, in life, in relationships, than their IQ or their academic ability. So yes, school districts know I talk about this, and I know that school districts are focused on the academic. What this is going to do is help you understand having a child have that emotional and social capability will help them academically, because they'll be able to interact better with their classmates, make friends easier, they'll be happier in school, they can ask questions easier, all kinds of traits that go along with emotional intelligence. So this is what it's showing. Some of this technology, when the kids are not given the other opportunities or boundaries with technology, and they're not given opportunities socially, they're losing some of this ability. And I'm seeing this across the state with the hundreds of parents I'm talking to. They're saying, my child never gives me eye contact anymore. Are we a good model, though, for it? So this is the problem. We as parents have to take a look in the mirror and say, what messages are we sending about how important technology is to us? When we think of children, those face-to-face interactions we're talking about help them gain a lot of information about people and social situations. And I like this last sentence. Children can become detached from others' feelings because they're not learning to read and pick up on cues like body language. So 93% of what you're communicating every day is through your body language. How can you do that? Through your phone. How can you do that through an email or a text message? So 93% is picked up, and children are not really able to pick up on those things through the technological means. Thoughts or comments on those quotes? Yeah.
I don't know if anyone here was at it, but they had a presentation of the speaker, I think it was like in the fall of 2014 maybe.
Okay.
And the woman talked about every 5 years they do a study on empathy levels in teenagers, and it's pretty stagnant. 10 years before that, they saw a slight dip. And then 5 years, the next 5 years, they saw a dramatic drop in empathy levels. And they talked about crimes being committed at parties where kids are just taking videos and no one's stopping it.
Yes.
Because they are losing their empathy towards humans. So
That's exactly what we're talking about. So that becoming detached, we want children to be able to relate to other people, and even if they can't relate, show empathy to other people's experiences. And that's a higher level form of emotional intelligence, and we want our kids to be able to do that. And we're not giving them as many opportunities to do that when they're behind the technology. When we look about other consequences, when we don't have boundaries in place in our homes, oh my gosh, these kids are having trouble falling asleep. Their brain is so overwired now and overstimulated. If they're stopping a video game at 8:05 and they're going to bed at 8:30, they're still all wound up from the video game. So the blue light, they talk about that, and I don't know all the details of what that does to the brain, but it's certainly not a benefit to falling asleep and difficulty sleeping overall. And they also can have bad dreams and things if they're watching violent things. This is pretty obvious. We have a lot of children sitting a lot instead of running around outside throwing a football with friends after school. So the obesity rates go up. They're reading less, they're doing less homework. They're spending less time with family, interacting one-on-one. They may be playing a video game with the brother sitting on the couch, but that's very different than climbing the tree or riding their bikes outside. Here's one, it can be a plus and a minus. They can have more difficult time making decisions because they have so much information that they're trying to process. In the end, when you see the benefits of technology, sometimes they can have more interesting problem-solving skills because they're trying to get to different levels and figure out how to do this and how to do that. So there's benefits to it as well. But many times these children are so overwhelmed with the information, they just have a more difficult time making decisions. children who have TVs in their bedroom, don't raise your hand if you have a child with TV in your bedroom right now, just do worse on academic testing. Why do you think that would be? What do a lot of kids do when you go to bed? You don't have control over that. You don't have control over that. I had a young man stay with me for 10 years as part of the Fresh Air program through New York City, and he was always in shock when I would send him to bed. He was 6 when he started with us, and he'd say, "But Mrs. Murray, I need the TV on." And I said, "Honey, we don't have TVs in our bedrooms." I said, "So you're gonna fall asleep like naturally." And it was like such a shock to his system. And he used to talk about it. He's always tired in the morning. His mom would have to drag him out of bed. And I would say, "Well, are you tired because you're watching TV?" He said, "Well, I would try not to watch it too late." These kids can get up and turn the TV on when you go to bed. So they are getting less sleep than they do more poorly on testing, okay? And of course, violence, we know it can desensitize kids, especially when they're playing video games and watching things that are, of course, way above their developmental level for them to have any understanding. And many of it is, of course, absolute junk, trash, that they should not be a part of anyway, at any age, at any age. Thoughts or comments on other consequences when you don't have boundaries in place for this at home? We're going to look at these, and I'm going to give you my opinions, my comments based on what I've seen parents dealing with. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is, what kind of a model are you? This is a big one. Years ago, I was out to dinner with some people related to my son's sports. And there was a coach, and he was kind of a prominent guy in the community, and all the kids knew him pretty well, and very outspoken. I'll just say that. And my son was sitting beside him, we ordered dinner, and the kids were there and talking, and the new no texting and driving law came into effect. And this was the words out of this man, this very large personality. He said, "But I can get away with it." Those were his words, "But I can get away with it." And he's a physician. And my son, we were going back in the car, and I said to him, "Guess who you will never be riding with again in a car?" And I'll call him Mr. Smith. He said, "Mr. Smith." And I said, "Why?" And this was my son. He was probably, let's see, he's 18. What was that? 12? He was 12, something when it went into effect. He said, "Because he's an idiot, Mom." His exact words. And I said, "You're right. Here's a man who knows what happens when people text and drive, and what is he modeling right there at the table for his 3 boys, my son and other kids on this team, that I can get away with it." So my son recognized in that moment that would not be a good idea to ride with him. And so you can imagine when my son got his license and we started talking about it, if I would have been the parent in the car texting, not even while I'm driving, but at the red light, pulling my phone out of the purse, "I'm so important that I need to look at these messages right now." It's sending a message when your son is 3, 4, 5, 6, the whole way till they're 16, they're watching you. So when you go to try to put rules in place, they may say, "But Mom, but Dad, you do this, you do that." So the very first thing we have to talk about, what are we modeling? So what do you think about that? I'll never forget that. My son remembers that to this day. That this man said he could get away with it. That he was smart enough that he didn't have to worry about crashing his car or hurting someone. What do you think about the way we're modeling for the kids? What kind of things are we modeling, positive or negative? I didn't say you. What kind of things are we modeling?
Use the car as an example, but, and we've talked about this, being away from your iPhone for 5 minutes is sometimes a stretch. So it's not just when you're in dangerous situations, but just when you're in family situations at home, and whether it's the iPhone is so much more obvious, but you don't listen as well, you're not doing and sometimes that's more important than listening to your child. Or
Yes.
doing something with your child. Or you stop doing something with your child because the all-important phone dinged.
Yes. And children know if you're paying attention to them. So you may think just checking a quick email for a second, they may stop telling their story, or they may lose interest in talking to you because what you are showing them is something else is more important right now, even though it most likely is not. Most of us are not in jobs that it's life or death if we answer that email this moment. We're not. We're just not that important. And so when we take time away from our children from telling the third grade story or talking about the baseball game, understand there's an impact when you continue to do that. And that's a pattern of behavior with parenting. Understand that that will have negative consequences for you in the relationship with your child. It'll be negative. And so we need to be a good model for this. Dinner time. When we look at choosing no technology zones, absolutely positively put your phone away. Dinner time has been shown 3 to 5 days a week for children through elementary school and middle school, actually, who are sitting at a dinner table with parents who are connected to them, 3 to 5 days a week do less drugs and alcohol in high school. That's because if you're connecting to your children and talking to them and finding out about what's going on, kids feel happier, healthier, safer, more secure and confident. And they don't feel the need to do drugs and alcohol and fit in. So there's a huge benefit to putting this away and paying attention. So kids know if you're paying attention. We have to be a good model before we put any boundaries in place. Because if we're not going to follow our own rules, then you're not saying what you mean and meaning what you say. And so therefore you could never ask your children to follow those rules. So it's going to be really important. Texting and driving is a pretty obvious one. But putting that phone away at dinner is more difficult for people. Just like turning off the TV at dinner. A lot of people have TVs in their kitchen. I don't, but a lot of people do. And I just think we have constant noise. Constant noise. And then we wonder why kids are coming into schools like looking stressed and anxious. They never have time to just decompress and not have all that outside noise. So as parents, it's our job to do that for them and put that in place. Because they're probably not going to choose it without those boundaries. What else do you think we're doing modeling-wise for our kids with technology?
Well, we're picking up the phone less and calling people. So, you know, a lot of times you're texting in between so they're seeing that that's how you communicate with people. So that's how they're going to communicate with people.
Right, so instead of calling grandma,
Right.
you might text her, you'll be over in 10 minutes. So
Right.
you're right, that seems to be the model. And is it faster and easier so you don't get hung up on the phone with your mom? Yes, and sometimes that's totally appropriate. You just want to watch the message you're sending. Someone recently texted me and I picked up the phone and I called him. And he goes, why are you calling me? And I said, sorry, I'm a little old-fashioned. Instead of like texting 3 paragraphs about the plans for the weekend, how about I give you a call? And we go, oh, okay. It was like this shock. And it's so we really need to get back to some of those things that, again, connect kids socially. Because tone of voice is part of communication. Picking up on tone. Have you ever sent an email or a text message that was read wrong? They read your tone wrong. This is what we're talking about. So when I first started texting, I have to laugh. So I have 2 grown stepchildren, and I texted one of them, and my stepdaughter, her name is Christine, she texted back, why are you yelling at me? I said, what are you talking about? She goes, it's all capital letters, you're yelling at me. I didn't know that. I didn't. So tone is important. So our kids need to know we can pick up the phone, we can hear people's voices, and that's a better read of people. What else are we modeling?
Oftentimes I feel like I'm modeling, oh, this is more important, the laptop or the phone, whatever it may be. And so that's not good, but then on the positive side, we try to keep technology out of bedrooms. So that could be like our no technology zone. That could be a good modeling sort of thing. So there's good and bad modeling. for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So hopefully you start thinking a little bit about what messages you're sending children. before you decide to put boundaries in place. I need you to think about that. It's the very first step. Because without that, it's really hard to communicate this to kids. Using places where there's no technology, for me, it was the dinner hour. It wasn't an hour, it's probably 20 minutes, but the dinner time and the bedroom. We did not have technology in the bedroom, like you said, and I'll show you again from elementary, middle, and high school what we did throughout that. And my son just thought that was funny that I was gonna share that with you, but it really did help. Are there any other places that you would say would be really important to have no technology zones? Yeah.
Church.
Ah. Yes.
Adults, sitting there.
Yes. So, with church and other places where there's a speaker or your child needs to show respect to somebody listening and presenting that came to talk, really important to send that message, and again, from your modeling. So even though it's tempting to pull out your purse and just do a quick look, they're watching all of that, that's more important than what we're doing right now. One of my, I won't call it a New Year's resolution because I've done it outside of the New Year's resolution, is be more focused and present in the moment. It's on my mirror, on my bedroom mirror. Be more focused and present in the moment. You can't do that when you're doing technology and somebody's in front of you. You can't. You're missing so much. You're missing so much. Subtle things, big things, a feeling somebody wants to express. So let's help our kids be more focused and present in the moment. Yes?
The first time that I took my son to the dentist when he was 3, the dentist had the television in the room and had that turned on, and as soon as Ryan got in the chair, I asked them to turn the TV off. And the doctor came in and said, why don't you have the television on in here? Why didn't the technician turn that on for you? And I said, because I want my son to pay attention to you and pay attention to what the technician is doing and saying. I don't want him to be watching TV while his teeth are being cleaned. He needs to listen to what you're telling him. And I mean, they thought I was, their attitude was, what kind of parent are you that you're not letting your child watch television while they're getting their teeth cleaned? And things have twisted. I know I'm old-fashioned, but I just thought, this is ridiculous. Why do they have to have television screens, entertainment constantly?
I agree.
So I'm the opposite. I'm like, I want the technology gone. Let's go back to just, But I feel like I'm fighting against the tide of times, and I feel more frustration in how can I keep this out of my home when society is pushing it on me, and I'm trying to teach Ryan to be respectful.
Right.
And even the dentist was like, So now the dentist understands me, and they turn it off when you get in the room.
And what I'm hearing you say, which I really like, is you have certain limits for your child, and just because you're in a certain location and that's what everybody's doing, you speak up, and your child sees you speaking up. What you want to be able to do, because obviously it's not going to change. Technology, it's just going to keep growing. You want your child obviously to have those skills and be informed and be educated in those things, also to have balance. And so what she's talking about reminds me of all my friends when the children were little. They wanted to get the minivan or the SUV that had the built-in TV screens on the back of the chairs. And I told my husband, absolutely, positively not. I do not want a car that has the built-in, have the screens and the TV running. And my friends would say, oh yeah, like when we run to the store and we're running errands, it keeps them quiet. I said, so you're not having any discussion with your child about the birthday party they went to or their friends up the street or any of those things. You have your child in such a perfect place to have those fun discussions, to sing in the car to the radio or whatever, and you're sticking a screen right there, and it is really hard sometimes for parents who are used to just constantly entertaining their child to understand kids need to be able to entertain themselves sometimes and to find those ways to do that, and we've really lost that. So I appreciate what you're saying, because I would want my son to hear what the dentist is saying about flossing and brushing his teeth and all of those things. It's okay to have those limits, then also to have the balance of, I still need my child to know about different technology, because they are going to need it when they are in school and in college, et cetera, and in the world. So I appreciate that. So really knowing with these that your household may look different than my household. I may have different limits than you, and that's perfectly fine. These are just things I wanted to bring to your attention, maybe say it in a different way that gets you thinking about it so that you can put these things in place. Use parental controls. If the computer, the TV, you know, all of those things that you can put in place so the child can't go to certain channels. The problem is a lot of children know how to work their way around those things, right? My son jokingly said, oh, you could probably put things in place, Mom, I'll figure out how to get out of them. And I thought, he probably can, and I'll have no idea that he did it. You know, so really being aware of what those are and being consistent in trying to keep those in place for kids. One of the things that I did a lot with my son, and some days he was really sick of talking about it, but we talked about the risks of the use of some of this technology and things that can pop up and websites and things that aren't appropriate and aren't acceptable, and we would expect, you know, he would make better choices and on and on. So we do talk about that. When I was talking to my son about it last night, I even talked to him a little bit more about it. He's like, Mom, I get it. You know, I'm 18, I'm leaving for college. I get it. You know, I've seen some of the stuff. I have friends that have issues with some of these websites, and he said, I get it. And so the good news is if you start talking to your children in elementary school in developmentally appropriate language about what's appropriate, what's not, that they can come talk to you. One day my son, I forget what we were looking up for school, and a couple different words came up, and he's like, Mom, what does that mean? I said, that's not a website we would go to. This would be a website we would go to from what we were researching. And he was like a little embarrassed about it, and I said, honey, it's okay. Like, that's what I want you to talk to me about. If something comes up and you're not sure if that's something that's going to be acceptable, and I'm not sitting right here with you, let's talk about it. You're not going to get in trouble for talking about that. So your children need to know the risks, and they need to feel like they can come to you if they're confused by something, or they did get into something they shouldn't have. They need to be able to come to you freely and not feel like they're going to get into trouble and you know, feel bad about it. That's really important. Yeah.
Well, the one thing I wasn't quite sure where to throw it in here. I just heard on a program that because a father talked to his daughter, actually, I mean, I think mom talked to daughter about the birds and beads and everything, but because it was an open subject in the home, to make the long story short, one evening when his daughter had a sleepover, he overheard his daughter saying, hey, just ask my dad. And he sat there and talked about questions that they had because his daughter was so open with them.
About technology or about?
It was a lot of things, but it was partly about the sexual thing too, which you get into on technology. And I think they had run into something, and he goes, well, just ask Dad. And if we have open conversations with our children, starting young, about anything, they're going to come to us faster than go to their friends or someone else.
Absolutely.
The other thing about no technology zones is one thing that I implement, and I don't do it every night or anything. I have a 10-year-old, is the only child I have in my home at this time. She knows that I have access to everything on her tablet. And the tablet doesn't go into the bedroom except for with special permission, maybe to do homework or something at a time, but then not for long periods of time. And I'm allowed, because we pay for it, it's a privilege, we can go in and look at anything that she's been looking at. The phone will not come for a couple of years. I don't even have a smartphone. I have a dumb phone. It's very dumb sometimes. But just for them to know
that you can get in there and you have the passwords and they're not allowed to change them without you knowing, helps to keep them accountable and make better choices.
Well, and what you're talking about is it creates limits and they do problem solving that way.
Yeah.
It's, if they know that that's the case and it's gonna be open by the parents, then they'll make better, healthier choices. We also want to hear what she said about keeping that dialogue open because kids are gonna be curious about things. So they're gonna ask you or they're gonna look it up at some point. It's just part of the way we're wired to be curious. And so we need to have open communication about it. So really talking to kids about the risks and looking at ways, developmentally, ways we control it. And you're gonna see the Murray household, what we did from elementary through high school and what he looks like now, he's heading to college. Because I can't follow him to Cabrini College where he's going. I can't go there and see if he, he's looking at things in the middle of the night. I can't do that. So what you have to do as parents, say, I'm doing the best I can now to create the values and the limits and the things that I want to instill in my child so that they make good decisions. Yeah.
One thing about parental controls, every single telecom, internet service provider, you can actually log into the modem, and you can actually see every device that's connected to your network, and you can click on that, and you can actually access like a complete browser history and set hard limits and access.
Okay.
And I mean, every single device that connects to the internet has a Wi-Fi chip with its own, unique identifier and the name of the device. And just, if kids are being really smart about getting around regular parental controls, is just like a software interface. You can actually just easily log in. It's usually like HTTP, and you can look. It's like a different set of numbers.
Okay.
But you can log right in.
We need to call this guy when we want to make sure our kid, right? We just need to hire him, so we'll get your number at the end, sir. When we look at the other tips, get the screens out of the bedrooms. I mean, if you have a TV in your child's bedroom, I'm really personally against it. You have very little limits then on because literally, I mean, you can go to bed and you can think their child's in bed, but they can get up and turn the TV on. And we just really want to be careful. The messages we're sending about how important TV is in their lives. Of course, we want to encourage other activities like sports and socialization and hanging out with mom and dad. Make sure you're getting those passwords. Social media limits would involve things that they're allowed to get on and not allowed to get on at certain ages. And I'm not going to tell you what you should be doing. I will tell you what my son did in a few minutes. Choose a time of day where they just get shut down, mom and dad included. And now it's family time. It might be watching a movie together and snuggling and making popcorn, that's fine. But where your phone's not connected to you, okay? And you're not preoccupied. The other night, I came home pretty late. I see my son 4 days a week, and I came home and I was exhausted, and I just wanted to eat and get a shower and go to bed. And he was sitting watching the Flyers. And I thought, I just, kind of wanted to go upstairs and go to bed. And he was sitting there watching the Flyers, and he had his computer up, and he was working on something. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to sit. And I would normally have wanted to have my computer up too, checking the last-minute work emails. And I did not bring it into the living room with me. And it was interesting because I wasn't preoccupied on my computer. We were able to talk and watch the game together and yell at the players who, weren't scoring and have a conversation about it because he's going to a game soon, I think next Monday. And so we were talking about the game. So just even while we were watching the game, we had more interaction than we would have if we both would have had our computers open. So even just tweaking a little bit of what you do, you're going to see it's going to open up more opportunities for engagement. And then let your kids choose their tech activities. If it's a certain time of day and you're having limits in place, you get an hour, or you get a half hour or whatever it is that you choose. Let them choose what do they want to play a computer game? Do they want to watch TV? What do they want to do with that time? Okay? And of course, you would have limited choices for them. It's not going to be like whatever they want to do, but you would give them limited choices. So within your home, you would set these things up that are developmentally appropriate for you. This is what happened when my son was younger. Now, he's 18 now, so obviously it's not nearly as crazy as it is for your kids. But in elementary school, there was no computer or TV in his bedroom. Absolutely not. We monitored the use of the computer for his homework. And so we didn't have laptops or anything like that. So it was in a major area of our house where we had, everybody could have access to it, including his two sisters. And we would monitor his use for homework. That was it. He used his cell phone to call his sisters in college then and his grandparents. He wasn't like asking, begging to use the phone. So that was my experience in the elementary years. In the middle school, we still had no computer or TV in the bedroom. He got a Facebook page in 7th grade. Might have even been closer to 8th grade. And we had access to it. So my husband then got a Facebook page. He friended him so he could see everything that was being posted and all that good stuff. He got a cell phone at the end of 7th grade. He was one of his last friends to get a cell phone. We need to stop trying to keep up with the Joneses. We need to stop feeling so much pressure to keep up. I am hearing younger and younger children getting cell phones. What do they need a cell phone for? I seriously, I cannot come up with any reason your child needs a cell phone. My son did not need a cell phone. He was in 7th grade. He wasn't driving. He knew when I was picking him up, dropping him off. It was clear communication. We didn't have a cell phone in elementary school. We somehow made it through. Unless your child has a major medical situation, major medical condition, which one of my friend's children did. She got it for him in 4th grade. And she had really serious episodes. And so for safety and for medical, she got it for that. And that's what it was used for. And she monitored that. I just don't know why we're giving kids cell phones. Because again, they're getting addicted to it earlier. And we're taking away some of the opportunities for them to be interacting in a way that's more social for kids at this stage. So we really want to be careful how young we're giving kids cell phones. I'm not going to tell you the age, like, oh, you really shouldn't at this age. But really, I mean, middle school, I think, is a good time to start introducing that if that's what you would like to do. We were late in the game. My son complained about it for 2 years. And I said, we told you when it would happen. We were consistent with what our message was. That's when it happened. So then he started complaining about it less. And then he would even say, I don't even know what I would need it for right now. He had everything he needed. There was no need for a cell phone. So we just want to be careful of trying to keep up with everyone. Yes, you want your child to say they fit in and they're like other kids, and that's important socially. You also have to take a stand, though, as parents, in what you want to expose your child to at a younger age. Because once they get that cell phone, you're going to lose some of that control. Okay, so we really need to think about that. At 8 o'clock, the cell phone was turned off and given to us. So we really had still a lot of control. And you're going to see, flash forward here. In high school, 9th and 10th grade, he turned in his phone at bedtime. We made the mistake of not doing that. It was a problem. It was a big problem. And one of my friends called me up and said, oh my gosh, he was talking to Braden last night. And it was like 2 in the morning. I said, wait, my son was talking to Braden? What do you mean? Oh, they were talking, because the phone rang and I got up and I went into Braden's room and he said, Grant called. And I was like, oh, no. So that was my like, ding, ding, ding. Why didn't I know to take his phone? So we took it at bedtime. There was no computer in his bedroom. He had a laptop at that point. There was no computer in his bedroom at night after his homework was completed. So we didn't have access to that, and he still had no computer in his bedroom. He's heading to college. He actually has a TV now. He goes between 2 households, and I do have a TV in the bedroom where he stays with me. There's a lot less monitoring of his phone or computer. We have a lot of discussion. He's leaving for college. Because I feel like we did a lot right. When he was younger, I have not had any major issues. Now, do I wish, when he walks in the house and we're talking and the phone rings, do I wish he'd think it's more important to talk to mom than it is to answer his cell phone from his girlfriend? Of course I do. That's normal teenage stuff, though. That's to be expected. But what I haven't had problems is some of the major issue that some of my friends and their children have had with the computers, with the addiction of the games, the gaming. My son's very well-rounded and plays sports and goes to church groups and does all kinds of things socially. So if he wants to play a few games on the weekends, no big deal, because he's doing the other things. So again, it's about that balance that we're giving kids. This is what I did. What do you think of that? From elementary school through high school.
One of my immediate reactions was to the elementary school, they're exposed to so much more now than when your
Yes.
son was that age. So the gaming and the YouTubes and all of that is much more a part of our guys' life
Yes.
than what technology was yours.
Absolutely, and the PlayStation and all that was all part of elementary school where you wanted to get all the games. So watching what games they get and the ratings they get. I had a friend who would call me before her little boy Harrison would come over and say, "What's the rating on the games?" Because her child would go to friends' houses and it would be like these horrible, violent video games, and he was like 8. And I said, "Oh, you don't have to worry about that, but I'm really happy that you're checking."
Yeah.
So then it made me think I need to check when my child's going. Don't feel bad about doing that. Just like I would tell my son, if you're going to a friend's house, I've never met the parents, I'm going to get out of the car and I'm going to actually go to the door. So I just want to let you know, no big shock, I'm getting out of the car. And he'd be like, "Oh, Mom, ding dong, hi, I'm Mrs. Murray, you're going to be home tonight." He was 11 or 12 and he's just like mortified. Oh well. So sometimes as parents, again, we need to set the limits. It's our child's job to test them. We have to step it up though and say, enough's enough. So what I want you to do, just for a minute, is maybe not talk to whoever you came with, if it's a spouse or friend. Just very quickly identify one of the tips that you think you absolutely need to put in place as a boundary or a guideline that you recognize, just from this very brief conversation, you recognize that this is an issue and this is where you need to fine tune what you're doing. So just a minute, talk to somebody. If you need to get up and stretch just for a second, that's fine, and then we're going to wrap it up. Okay, just turn to someone and tell them what one of these tips that you're going to use.
Hi. You guys want to go? You have to talk.
Okay, let me bring you back, just for the sake of time. What were a couple of the things that stood out that you realized right away you need to put these things in place or make a change? What were a couple of the tips? Yes?
The role model. I think just thinking how you use your phone and how, your child asks you a question, you quick answer them as you're responding.
Yes.
And maybe they would have said more to you if
Absolutely.
you would have just answered their question. Like, maybe you should just not, deal with it during a certain time period. Not that you can't have it or use it, but
Yes.
I think just being conscientious of the behavior now.
Something I really want you to hear after over a decade of doing hundreds of parenting seminars, you don't get a do-over. This is it. So if you have a third grader here, This is it. This is the 3rd grade year. You don't get to do it over. And if you are wasting precious moments and teachable moments and opportunities to interact and just see the expressions on their face and hear their tone when they're talking about a new friend they made, and you're missing that, you don't get to do it again. So is it really more important to see who just dinged you? Is it? Because for me, my son's leaving for college, and I blinked, and he was 18. So I wish I was sitting here as an elementary parent. I blinked. He's leaving. So don't blink, because you're missing opportunities. So thank you for acknowledging that we have to be a better model. Yes?
I think my challenge is that my husband and I don't always agree on what is and isn't appropriate, or that necessarily the length of screen time or exposure to computer games is as damaging to their brain development as I have read that it is, and I believe that it is. So that's where we have a challenge. I can come up with all kinds of limitations, but if as with any parenting thing, if we're not in agreement,
Right.
it's, it's daddy lets me, that becomes a challenge.
Yes, it always is. So if you have a different parenting style than the person you're living with, or your child's going back and forth between 2 different parenting styles, it's sending inconsistent messages. All I can tell you about that is you do the best that you can when you have the child in your presence, setting that structure, boundaries, and consistency in place. And that's really all you can do. You can't change someone else. So we do our very best with our kids when we have them. And that's really all we can do. When we look at the benefits, there are benefits to kids using technology, and there's no doubt about it. And you can see some of these benefits. Like I said, this can be negative and positive. There can be an increase in problem-solving skills because they're trying to get to different levels and they're trying to strategically plan and all of that. They may develop new skills and talents based on new information they get because they're able to expand their horizons. They may be able to look things up and learn about something and say, hey, Mom, I saw this really neat video where these kids are playing in this band, and I actually wish I knew how to play the trumpet. They may expand what they already know or create an interest that they didn't have based on some of the things they see in technology. So for me, I really hope what this leaves you with is a better sense of what you're doing well with creating some of those limits, and then also giving you a little bit of a wake-up call. That, yes, our kids need technology, they also need some limits and structure to it. And if they don't get it from us, where are they going to get it from? And so the schools are going to be giving them technology to use to bring into the home. So if you have these things in place before that happens, or while that's happening, it's going to make the process so much easier. Because it's a wonderful academic tool. It's an incredible academic tool. Our kids just need to know how to do other things. And this book, What Kids Really Want, that money can't buy, they said, consider doing the following options as a parent when you think about electronics. Think about the opposite. Watch less TV and plant more flowers. Resist upgrading just because you can. Spend at least 1 week each year giving up all electronic entertainment and go play. Go take your child somewhere and go do something. Watch 1 less video and enjoy 1 more sunset. Don't answer the phone during dinner time. Make your child the priority. And I hope this really gives you pause to say, I don't get a do-over. I don't get a do-over, and I want to get this right. So this is your year to start creating structure, boundaries, and consistency with technology. Please feel free to contact me. My email address is on the front of your packet if you have things you want to talk about or share privately, and I'm happy to stick around afterwards if you have any questions. Thank you so much for coming out. I do have another parenting class coming up. It's with Carrie Wilson at Centerville Middle School. And, oh boy, I lost the date. Do you happen to know the date? April?
Oh, we just looked at it.
Let's
say the 21st.
Okay, I'm so sorry. If you email me, I will get you all the
There's
information.
flyers on the
It's on
counters
the
in the
district
offices.
website, it's out in all the buildings.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just have a flyer today.
I highly recommend it. If you liked the content of this, it's all about behaviors. So parenting styles, behaviors, and creating a really good home environment for behavior. So you don't want to miss that, bring a friend.
The guidance department is sponsoring that one for all parents, so it's open to anybody in the district. It is at Centerville Middle School.
It's free. So thank you, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you.
Lisa, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I've been to many of Lisa's workshops and seminars, and I always leave with something new. I have 3 children of my own, and so, you know, I get to see the range as well. I blink, and my oldest is now going to high school next year, so that's, yeah, she's going to high school. Hard to believe. But, you know, as Lisa talked about in the home setting, you know, the structure, the boundaries, and consistency. Every parent is different, every home is different, and you need to decide what works for you and your family at home. Just like in the school setting, you know, we do our best to provide consistency in the boundaries and structures for our teachers. So our teachers then work with students in their classroom, and they set those boundaries and the structures and the consistency within that classroom. And some of that consistency does change year to year depending on the teacher's comfort level as well with the technology and what's going to happen. What I'm going to challenge you with is at times your children may come home and say, well, I have to do this on the iPad because. That's not always the case. It's a tool that's meant to enhance the learning. It doesn't mean that everything always has to be done on the iPad. And when we talk about the balance, you know, there is a perception at times that parents think the kids in school are on the screens the entire day. That's not the case. There is that balance. I was just in a 4th grade classroom today, and it was so great to see that the kids they weren't at their desks sitting there with the iPad in front of them. They were up, they were conversing, they were communicating with each other, working collaboratively on a project, yet still had their own piece that they were working. They were conferencing with the teacher. So there's a lot that they do and that they're learning. And just also to be aware, this is our first year as a district with this initiative. It will continue to evolve over time, and we will continue to learn more. We are very fortunate. We have an outstanding tech department led by Mike Graham as our Director of Technology and Jeremy Paul as our Assistant Director of Technology. They are outstanding, and they're constantly looking for ways to continue to enhance what we can provide our students here in the district. So the parenting sessions came about because parents asked for it. And they're continuing to look at ways that we can really reinforce and make it easier at times to use the iPad at home. And that comes from a lot of the feedback. So when we do put out the surveys, or if you have any suggestions, feel free to call or email, set up a time to meet with us. We're happy to do that. Jeremy, Mike, anything that you want to add?
You cover it all?
Right. Sure.
May I just say, we talked about spouses that have different viewpoints and limits, and different houses that have different limits. As a retired educator, one of the things that I told parents a lot, and you just mentioned with teachers, is different houses, different rules, different teachers, different rules, and kids can learn to do very well with that.
Yes.
Just as they know Mrs. So-and-so will take the recess if you don't do this, but Mrs. So-and-so won't do that. You know, Max knows the rules in my house, he knows the rules in their house, and they do well by it. They learn. You know, it's a little harder, but you know, they can do it.
Yeah. And I will also thank you. I will also add to, you know, when Lisa talked about the discussion, keep having the conversations. That is so important. You know, I know with my kids, you know, they love the devices and they love different things, but I also take that as an opportunity to learn from them, kind of where their skill sets are at this point. I will go to my 8-year-old, I'll go to my 14-year-old, hey, help me, I need to do this, how do I do it? And I'll do that with my 8-year-old, just to kind of get a sense of where they are and the things that they're learning, because if you embrace it, not saying you have to use it all the time, but if you embrace that opportunity, you will also have the option to watch them grow with this, because it is in their future. They will be exposed to this regularly. So we need to prepare them, but prepare them responsibly. And that is one of our goals with this. So thank you again for coming out tonight. We are here if you have any questions.
The technology contracts are over there, and I just have to tell you what my 18-year-old wanted me to tell you. I ran out of time. It happened too fast. He said, tell them they really don't need cell phones. He said we really don't need cell phones, and he said tell them to really watch the websites the children are getting on, because some of his friends who have had issues with that. So he said tell them they don't need cell phones, the younger children, and to watch the website. So 18-year-old wisdom, he's been through it. And so I just thought I'd pass that on. There's some materials over there for you if you would like the contract.
And there's extra presentation materials on the back table as well. So again, thank you for coming out. Lisa, thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.